Hi guys, I've been gone for a while, I know, but I'm back. That's all that matters. And today I'm going to tell you about my favorite books that I read in 2015. Yay! Okay, so 2015 was such a great reading year for me because I read so many books that were sort of out of my comfort zone, and I discovered so many books through BookTube that I doubt I would have discovered otherwise. And BookTube means so much to me. And anyway, so these books that I'm going to be mentioning, some of them might not come as a surprise, although some of them you probably wouldn't have guessed. So I think that it would be kind of interesting, or at least it is for me. And I didn't put them in order of preference, although I'm gonna save my super favorites for towards the end of the video. They're not necessarily the best, but they were the books that really stood out to me personally, because I think I tend to have weird tastes in books. I'm not sure if you can really trust my opinion, but you can be sure that these books are pretty good. And also, these books weren't necessarily published in 2015, but I read them in 2015. So anyway, here we go. The first one is The City in the City by China Miéville, which is a weird urban fantasy mystery, which I think I shouldn't even tell you too much about it because the main premise of the book itself is what makes the book so cool. It's basically about a murder mystery, but more than that, it is about the mystery of two cities called Bijal and Orkoma, which has something strange and weird going on about them that I'd rather not tell you about because you should find out for yourself. But anyway, the thing with this book is that the author is the master of weird fiction. He really does a good job of making sense out of the weirdest, most strangest concepts. Very cool. Very weird. Very cool. And then the next one is another very weird but very cool book, and also very dark in places and a little bit too dark for me, but I think it's really worth mentioning because it was cool. The Use of Weapons by Iain M. Banks, which is the third book in the Culture series. And fun fact, my first Iain M. Banks book, and I'm glad that this was my first Iain M. Banks book. It gave me a strong enough impression of the author that I'm curious enough to want to read more of his works. But basically, this is a science fiction, takes place in the culture, which is super advanced civilization where they have like humanoid robots and stuff like that. It follows the life of Shiradaneen Zakalwe, who he once worked or did something with the culture, and he is getting recruited again to do a special mission. And the reason that this book is so cool is the way that it was written. It takes place in two separate storylines that alternate between each other. The first one is in the present when he gets recruited into the culture, and the other one is in reverse chronological order where you find out more about his past as the present storyline progresses, which makes it confusing, but it makes sense as to why it's written that way. It was fun to sort of try to figure out what the heck was going on, and it got me to care about the characters in a way that is very strange. I can't describe it without spoiling it, but yeah, it's cool. And then the next one might come as a surprise because this is one of those books that it was okay when I read it, but I like it more and more the more that I think about it. And it is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, which is a historical fiction set in the Spanish Civil War in Barcelona, Spain. And it follows the life of a young man named Julian Carax when he finds this book called The Shadow of the Wind, which is the last copy of a book by this famous author whose books all have disappeared except for this one copy. So he gets super intrigued by that, and he ends up devoting like the next few years of his life trying to figure out the life of the author and learning more about him. The thing with this book is that it felt like a soap opera. Despite the fact that it's only about 500 pages long, it's packed. It's such a journey of a book. It's one of those books that really pulled me in and made me want to live in the world. It got me to care about the characters. It's also very well translated. And the next one might also come as a surprise, but I thought I should mention it also, and it is The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, which was published in 2015 and was also a debut novel. And a lot of people really love this book, and I went into it already knowing the hype about it. It's also a science fiction space opera that a lot of people say would appeal to many different types of readers, whether you're new to the genre or you don't care much for sci-fi, or you really love the genre, because it has a lot of the elements that you would want in a sci-fi, but at the same time it's also very approachable. It's basically about a crew of humans and aliens who work in a super old spaceship, and their job is to punch wormholes in space, which allows for instant travel from one point in space to another point in space, and they are on a long journey on the way to this small and angry planet. And it's just a story that's very character driven with a lot of cute characters and imaginative creatures and imaginative concepts, and it's basically a very character driven book, and you get to learn about their relationships and stuff like that, which makes it very cute, and touching, and it's great fun, according to Anne Leckie. And then the next one is The Naked Sun by Isaac Asimov, which is book 2 in the Robot series. And I also really like book 1, which is Caves of Steel, but I like this one better. And the Robot series is a classic sci-fi series and also a mystery series about two detectives, a human detective and an alien detective, who work together to solve crimes in space. And book 1 follows a completely different storyline from book 2. And this one is basically about a planet called Solaria, where the population of robots is much higher than the population of human beings, which means that the human beings live in isolation because they're constantly surrounded by robots. What I really loved about it basically is how the author was able to incorporate a lot of like philosophical or really relatable human stuff into a science fiction story. And this book is really short and very easy to get through, but the ideas I thought were so cool, and I can see why Isaac Asimov is the author that he is. Okay, now we're on to my top 5 super favorite books. At number 5 would be Anne's House of Dreams, which represents the entire Anne of Green Gables series by Ella Montgomery, which is a classic children's series. Anne is a super adorable 11-year-old orphan in the beginning of the series. It follows her life as she gets older and has friends and then goes to college and then gets married and has kids, and it's just so fun to sort of live another life through Anne in a way. I read books 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 8, I believe, in the series, but they are books 1 to 6 in publication order, and number 5 was my favorite. But the whole series is just very cute, and it's not mind-blowing or anything, but it's just so cute. At number 4 would be Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson, and this is another science fiction space opera that was published in 2015 also, and pretty much the whole book basically takes place in this generation's ship, and it follows the lives of, I think, the 5th or 6th generation on that ship, and it's told from the perspective of the AI of the ship. It's hard science fiction, which means it really gets into detail about how they made this to be livable and make it kind of like Noah's Ark. So yeah, it pulled me in, wouldn't let me go, really awesome. And then at number 3, I have 2 short plays by Oscar Wilde, and I chose 2 because I couldn't just pick one, because these 2 are really awesome, and they are Lady Windermere's Fan as well as A Woman of No Importance. Oscar Wilde is an author that I think I would love to have met if I was alive at the time that he was alive, because he just gets me. I love his wit and humor, and these books are super short and quick, but I just love it. Lady Windermere's Fan is just super witty and clever, and it's about this girl who leaves her fan in a room and then chaos and gossip and stuff like that. And it's also about a girl who presumes her husband to be being unfaithful to her, and there's more to it than that. It's just super fun and quick. And then A Woman of No Importance talks about like family relationships. It was just really thought-provoking because it talks about relationships and how women were during that time or something like that. So yeah, I just liked it so much. And then at number 2 would be A Song for a Bond by Guy Gavil-Kay, which is my first Guy Gavil-Kay book, and it's an epic lyrical fantasy historical fiction also based on the Albigensian Crusade that happened in France. But it reads like a fantasy book. I didn't know anything about the historical aspect going into it, and I loved it so much. I think that Guy Gavil-Kay is such an underrated author. Despite the fact that he's really popular, I think that he doesn't get as much praise as he deserves, because this book was just so flawless in every way, because it's lyrical fantasy and it talks about the troubadours in France, which means that there's a lot of like music and singing, which makes it so beautiful, and its lyrical prose is just so sophisticated and flawless, and it's so satisfying to read in the atmosphere aspect, the lyrical aspect, as well as the plot, because the plot is really structured in a way that is so satisfying to read. And now we're on to my number 1 super favorite book of the year, which you probably already know is Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. I owe so much to Anne Leckie because I read this earlier in the year and then I reread it a little bit later during the year, and then I listened to the audiobook also. And this book is the book that got me to sort of read more science fiction books that are similar to it, but I have yet to find anything as cool as this, because this book is just very cool. Very cool. This is told from the perspective of a military spaceship with thousands of humanoid bodies that are linked to one brain. So ancillaries are basically like humans whose consciousness were taken out and replaced with something that links them to a ship, which means that they're kind of like corpse soldiers. That's what they're called, because they serve as military, but their brains are all linked into one spaceship. But this book takes place in 2 separate storylines. One is in the past, where the character was still a spaceship with thousands of bodies connected to it, and the other takes place in the present after something happened that destroyed that ship and everything with it except for one body. It's also the first book in a trilogy and I have yet to finish the third book. Okay, so there you go. Those are my favorite books of 2015. Let me know what you think of these books, if you've read any of them or if you plan to read any of them soon, and let me know what your favorite books of the year were, and I'll see you soon with another video. Thank you for watching.